will call a new sense of optimism. But there are reports of a potential cabinet split over whether the UK should pay the huge divorce bill, somewhere in the region of 35 to 39 billion pounds, if there is no trade deal, if trade talks fail. Let's talk to two Conservative MPs, Jonathan Gianogli, MP for Huntingdon and Member of Parliament's Exiting the EU Select Committee, who voted to remain in the EU referendum and now supports Britain leaving the EU, and Maria Caulfield is here, Conservative MP for Lewis and Member of the Northern Ireland Parliamentary Select Committee, who's always seen the benefits of leaving the EU. Hello.
Hello.
Right. David Davis says that 40 billion we're due to pay is conditional on getting a trade deal. The Chancellor says even if there's no deal, we need to honour our commitments. What do you think?
Well, my understanding is the deal that was done last week is the parameters of going forward with the trade talks. And as Theresa May has said previously, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So this is setting...
So if there's no trade deal, does Britain pay? That's the question.
Well, I think if there's no trade deal, and I think that's unlikely now, and I think last week has shown that a trade deal in one form or another is likely to happen. And so, you know, given that that's the likeliest scenario, that's likely to be the bill that we're paying.
If there is no trade deal, should Britain honour its commitments?
Well, the commitment, as set out in the agreement last week, is that there is no deal until we have a final deal. So the final deal would be a trade deal. So I think, you know, legally speaking, absolutely, there is no reason why we should pay money. And realistically speaking, I mean, if David Davis had come back and said, look, I've got this outline deal, we move forward to a trade deal. If we don't get a trade deal, we're still going to pay £40 billion. I think that would have been highly unacceptable to everyone in Parliament.
Right. But I mean, if there is no deal and Britain does not pay, if David Davis means that, then how does that look to other countries when we want to have bilateral trade deals with them?
I think you've got to look at this as a moving piece. It's hard to look at it as a standalone proposition. What we had last week was a statement of intent, technically not legally binding, but in practice where we want to go. And I think that the really important change is that if you look back at this time last week where everyone's doom and gloom and nothing's happening, now we have a framework to move forward and we have momentum. And I think that sense of optimism has come back into the equation, and I'm hoping it will carry us through.
I want to ask you about timeframes, because David Davis talked about a Canada plus deal. EU leaders, as you know, insist that a deal has to be done by October to give the European Parliament a chance to scrutinise it and to decide whether to support it, of course. MPs in the Commons also need time to vote on it. You know it took 7 years for Canada to do its free trade deal with the EU. How can a deal be done in the time frame?
Well, I think we're in a very different situation to Canada because we've been trading with the EU now for almost 40 years. And
yeah, but we want to diverge,
don't we? No, but absolutely. But currently, all our rules and regulations meet the EU criteria.
Yes.
That was not the case for Canada. So Canada had to make certain adjustments, had to make certain compromises in order to get where the EU wanted them to be in order to sign that trade deal. We're trading with them now. So as we stand now, a trade deal will be very easy to do.
Well, only if we want to continue with full alignment, though, which
not
according to some we don't.
Not necessarily, and we don't just want to look at a Canada deal. We need a much more bespoke deal because Canada mainly deals in goods,
yeah.
And we've got financial services to look at. So, you know, we will be looking at also the Swiss model. So there's a number of models. So we really do need a bespoke deal. But
Can that be done by October?
The proposal is that we try and get terms by March. October is the EU's deadline.
Yes.
David Davis has said that we can go all the way through until March 2019 and still strike a deal. And of course, most of these trade deals are at the end.
But that doesn't give you enough time, does it, to scrutinise and vote on it in the Commons before March the 29th, 2019?
Yeah. But what the EU and David Davis has said, that if we did agree outline terms for a future trade deal at any time before March, that could be finalised during the implementation period, which should be 2 years after that.
Okay.
So again, we've got this moving feast going through, which is confusing for people, but it's not going to be a set moment of time. These things will develop.
Several things that Brexiteers said wouldn't happen have happened. They said we won't have to pay anything to leave the EU. We do, and it's substantial. They said the European Court of Justice won't have any influence. It will for up to 8 years. And if no agreement can be reached on the Northern Ireland border, the whole of the UK, not just Northern Ireland, will maintain full alignment with the EU's single market and customs union. What do you think of that?
Well, we don't have to pay a deal. You know, if you look at the House of Lords report, legally we're not bound to pay any money at all. But this is part of the negotiations.
We are doing.
Well, this is the parameters.
They said we wouldn't have to, and we are.
This is the parameters of setting out what we want from a free trade deal. And as you said previously, if we don't get that free trade deal, we're not legally bound to pay anything. So this is about the negotiations and setting out that if we want a free trade deal, the 2 years of commitments of money that we've already been committed to, we're happy to pay. But after that, we won't be paying a penny. And I would expect to see out of a free trade deal that there won't be an ongoing commitment, because there's 50 other countries that have a free trade deal with the EU and not one of them pays a penny for that.
I want to ask you, as a previous Remainer, if I may, what you think about Labour's position, which yesterday they suggested they would be in favour of easy movement of people from the rest of the EU to Britain, and British people moving to the European Union.
Yeah, well, first, in some ways, I hope we're moving beyond the leave and remain argument now. You know, we are going out. It's the question of the terms on which we go out. And it does seem that the Labour Party, which, by the way, is more split than the Conservative Party on this issue, are moving close.
I don't know how you can say that, but
well,
you just did with a straight face.
I think you can, because...
And obviously we did ask for a Labour MP to join us,
Right.
It wasn't possible.
Right, but, you know...
What do you think about
Well,
easy
I think
movement?
they're moving closer towards a customs union type position.
What do you think about easy movement?
I personally think that we will come to a deal on this. If you look at countries like Norway or Switzerland that are not part of the EU but that have deals with the EU, it does involve some level of free movement. Now, in Switzerland's case, that's a restricted amount. But you know, what's the alternative? We start doing free trade deals with third-party countries. If you look at India, Australia, New Zealand, they have all said that their number one request will be UK visas. So the idea that we leave the EU and suddenly end the immigration debate is simply not the case. This country will need immigration. The immigration will be related to our economy. If our economy is improving, we'll want immigration. If it's going down, we'll want less of it. And we will have to have a fair immigration policy that reflects that need.
Agree?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we've got the immigration bill coming through Parliament at the start of next year, because it isn't about ending immigration, it's about having control over immigration and having, you know, when we have got skills that we're short of, that we welcome those people, whether they're from the EU or from the rest of the world, and where people have the skills we've got a surplus of, you know, we can say no to. So it's about having control of that immigration, and the immigration bill next year will start to set that out.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maria Caulfield and Jonathan Giannogli, thank you for coming on the programme.